Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the webinar conducted by TCS Online in lieu of the strategic case study examinations happening in February 2022. So let's look at the session outcomes first. So this is our plan about with regards to what we are going to do today. So our session is divided into three main areas. In the first area, I will be taking you through an exam overview of SCS, talking about the nitty-gritties, the technicalities of the examination. Then the second area is one of the most important areas where I'll be talking about exam technique. And when talking about exam technique, I'll be highlighting the main problems which arises or which pops up in the mind of students. And on top of that, I will be taking you through examiner's reports as well to figure out what the examiner wants us to do. Okay, so that's part number 2. And part number 3, that's an important area as well. I will be carrying out a mock exam analysis based on mini mock prepared by TCS Online. Okay, so pathway to SCS, there are two sets of students when you look at the SCS examination. You have students coming through the general route. These students do the OTQ examinations and face the exam, and there are a set of students coming through the exemption route as well, which is known as the Finance Leadership Program or the FLP. So these are the two pathways to SCS. And talking about the exam, if you are coming through the general route, by now you should be accustomed with how the case study examinations in CIMA is happening. So just like in OCS and SCS, this is a PC based exam, and this is going to be a 3-hour paper. All right. So talking about the exam being PC based, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, you now have the option of doing the exam at home as well. So, you can select whether you can choose as to whether you are comfortable with doing your examination at home. If that is the case, I would recommend you to do that. Or else, if you feel that you are much more accustomed to doing the exam in an examination hall or in an examination setting, then I would ask you to pursue that. So that's what the exam is about. It's a PC based exam. You can do it at home as well, and it's a 3-hour paper, just like in OCS and MCS. But the number of tasks have changed now. So in OCS and MCS, you would have seen 4 main tasks, but in here at SCS, you have only 3 main tasks, and the time allocation per task has changed as well. Now you are allocated 1 hour per task, 60 minutes per task, and the pass mark is the same, 80 out of 150 or 54%. Right, then looking at a general overview of the exam, information is provided about a fictitious company in advance. So you might have gone through this document already, which is known as the pre-scene document. So the pre-scene document is provided by CIMA, and they have compiled information about the company, the industry, the finances, as well as they have provided information about a direct competitor of this fictitious company, PixelWiz, which is considered for the upcoming SCS examination. So I hope that you would have gone through the pre-scene by now. Okay, and in the exam, you are required to address issues or questions relating to the operations of the company. Yes. So at the exam, you'd get questions. So in the pre-scene, you get all the information about what has happened in the past when you consider the organization. But at the exam, you'd be thrown or questions will be thrown at you concerning the current operations of the company. So when providing solutions to the issues highlighted in the examination or carrying out your evaluations based on requests made by the board of directors of the company, you need to know the ins and outs of the company as well as the industry. You need to have a good understanding about the internal dynamics of the company as well as the external dynamics, right? So you are playing the role of a senior finance manager at the SCS exam, and you are directly reporting to the finance director. So you are directly reporting to not just the finance director, but at the examination, you might be asked to report to some other directors as well. So the board members of any given company are involved with strategic decision making, long-term decision making. They are employing something called an outside-in approach. So they are much more concerned about what happens within the external environment, because the long-term decisions or the long-term decision makers are involved with trying to figure out what happens within the industry or the external environment, react to the changes in the external environment, or try to reshape the external environment. So you need to have a good understanding about the industry as a senior finance manager. And on top of that, you need to have an in-depth understanding about the company as well, especially because you are assisting long-term decision making. Okay. So, and on top of that, just knowing about the company or the industry won't help you. You need to apply your knowledge of E3, P3, and F3 related syllabus areas as well. So as a senior finance manager, it's not only about just because you know about the company or the industry, it won't actually help you in the exam. You need to know your core theoretical elements as well, mainly concerning E3, P3, and F3 areas. And I will talk about these things later on in depth as to how you can bring in E3, P3, and F3 related areas. And when I'm discussing the answer, you'd also understand, hopefully, how E3, P3, and F3 related areas can be brought into your answer. All right. So the first part of the session is done. Now we are moving on to the second part, where I'm going to take you through exam technique. Okay. So what's the right approach towards, handling your pre-seen document? Okay. So when going through the pre-seen document, what I've seen is most students try to by heart the entire pre-seen. I would not recommend that. Rather than, trying to figure out the nitty-gritties in its entirety, you need to know the key information. So how can you know the key information? You might, if you are, especially if you are coming through the FLP or the exemption route, you might not be in a position to figure out which of the information is key and which of the information is not. Okay. So there's absolutely nothing to worry, because we are providing something called an annotated pre-seen. So we have made our own annotations in here. So as you can see, I myself prepared this document. So all the main information had been taken out. Okay. And not just, I've not just taken out the main information. I've carried out my own analysis as well, focusing on key syllabus areas. As you can see, I've mentioned P3 and F3 in here. So I've related syllabus content to all the areas, all the information which appears on the appears on the pre-seen, and you can see that going through the entire annotated pre-seen, I've taken out all the key information, which makes your life easy when it comes to understanding your key information. And on top of that, closer to the exam, 2 or 3 days before the exam, just going through the annotated pre-seen, which would take you about 15 to 30 minutes, just going through our document would ensure that you pass or that you have an in-depth understanding about the key info which you need to pass your SCS examination. So I've given you an example. PixelWiz is one of the world's leading game developers. So likewise, you need to understand the key information about the company. So, and on top of that, a major component of the pre-seen document is the financial statements. Okay, so they have provided financial statements of PixelWiz as well as its closest competitor. So you need to know your numbers, because as a senior finance manager, just knowing about the internal dynamics of the company or the external dynamics won't help you. You need to know your numbers or the ratios as well. So you need to remember the key ratios. Again, I'm telling you, when it comes to memorizing, when it comes to remembering the key ratios, I'm not asking you to memorize all the numbers but you need to have a general understanding about the profitability of the company, the liquidity position of the company, the gearing level of the company, whether the company can go for loans, long-term loans in the future. And on top of that, you need to have an understanding about the activity ratios as well, or the working capital management initiatives carried out by the organization. And on top of that, you need to understand any areas where we can improve. Is there if there's an issue with profitability, there are certain steps which we need to take. So by going through a ratio or by carrying out a ratio analysis, you are in a position to figure out the main financial issues within the organization. Okay, so again, what I'm saying is you need not worry too much about the ratio analysis, because we have carried out a ratio analysis. I myself has carried out a ratio analysis, and there's a separate video for with regards to the financial analysis aspects of the company as well as its closest competitor. And on top of that, I've prepared a separate document as well. So I've carried out a horizontal analysis based on the financial statements of the company. And on top of that, I've carried out a ratio analysis as well. So going through these documents as well as the video would ensure that you know your numbers inside out. Then you have to prepare yourself for possible scenarios, but be open-minded. Yes. Why am I asking you guys to be open-minded? Because the examiner wants you to be open-minded. Okay. So you have to prepare for possible scenarios. Yes. So in order to prepare yourself for possible scenarios, you need to attempt mock exams so that you know what type of questions will be thrown at you. However, I'm not asking you to memorize the suggested answers of the mock exams as well, because in the real exam, you are replicating the type of work carried out by a senior finance manager. So as a senior finance manager, you will not be in a position to predict what type of issues the company would face and what type of solutions you would have to provide to the issues faced by the company. So definitely, when it comes to the case study examination, the examiner is trying to replicate a real life corporate environment. So in a real life corporate environment, you will not know what type of issues would arise within the company. Okay, you will not know what type of recommendations you would have to provide. So because of that, you have to be at all times, you have to be open-minded. Okay, and remember scenario presented in the exam is the latest information. I highlighted this point previously as well. So the information which appears on the pre-seen document gives us an indication about what has happened within the company in the past. However, at the real exam, the latest information will be provided. Okay, so that's that. Then another area which usually comes into the minds of students is how we are supposed to refer to the pre-seen information in answers. So I said that you need to go through the pre-seen document and figure out the main information. And most students do not know how to bring in the information from the pre-seen and include it in the answers. Okay, so I'm going to talk about how you are supposed to do it. You are supposed to refer or cite information which you are taking in from the pre-seen in such a way that it adds value to the point you are presenting to the answer. So whenever you are bringing in information from the pre-seen, that needs to be done with the intention of creating value. So I've seen in most instances when I'm giving feedback to students, what I've seen is students, there's a tendency for most students to bring in irrelevant information just to show that the students are trying to show to the examiner that they have gone through the pre-seen document. Just because you bring in irrelevant information, you won't get marks. Okay, so what I would suggest instead is you can always bring in pre-seen information. You are supposed to do that. Okay, for doing that, you get marks for practicality. However, if you bring in irrelevant information, if the information which you have brought in is not in line with the requirement of the task, you're not going to get any marks. Okay, so when you are bringing in information, it's all about value creation. You need to figure out whether the point which you are going to make is going to add value to your final answer. And do not force it in to show the marker that you have studied the pre-scene. That's exactly what I told you earlier. With the intention of just bringing in information. If you are bringing in irrelevant information, you won't get any marks. And in order to figure out how or what type of a methodology you need to adhere to when bringing in information from the pre-scene, you are supposed to refer to suggested answers of mock exams. I will be taking you through a mock exam. I'll be taking you through the answer at the very end of today's session, and you'd understand, hopefully you'd understand how information in the pre-scene can be inculcated into your final answer. Right. Another question which pops up in the minds of students is with regards to industry familiarization. So most students, I said that you need to know about your industry. So most students do not know that how much of familiarization or the type of familiarization they need to have with regards to the industry. You are expected to be familiar with the industry, yet need not be an industry expert. As a senior finance manager, you are not expected to be an industry expert. However, you need to have a general type of an understanding about the industry in which this fictitious company operates or PixelWiz operates. Okay, so you are supposed to do some reading to familiarize yourself with the industry. Again, we had prepared a document called the industry analysis, where I've considered real life examples, real life companies in the video gaming industry, and carried out an analysis. And if you go through that document, it would take you about 10 minutes to go through that document. If you go through that document, you would have all the necessary information about the industry, which would ensure that you pass the SCS exam without any hiccups. Okay, so that's the type of industry familiarization you need to have. Remember, you need not be an expert, but you need to have a general level of understanding about the industry. Right. Another question which pops up in the minds of students is with regards to how we are going to inculcate E3, F3, and P3 related syllabus content into the answers, and how we can study these areas. And this type of a question really pops up in the minds of students who had come through the exemption route, because they have not gone through the OTQ examinations. So at the SCS examination, you have to prepare for application of theories and concepts. So you would be requested to apply theories and concepts, not directly, but indirectly. Okay. So that's one aspect of it. You have to apply the knowledge which you have gained from E3, F3, and P3 into your answers. That does not mean that you need to write theoretical answers. However, when coming up with answers, when coming up with recommendations, or when carrying out your evaluations, you need to utilize the knowledge which we have gained through these syllabus areas. And when I'm going through the mock exam or the suggested answer of the mock exam today, you'd understand how you can bring in the theories and concepts into your answer. And you have to prepare for the interpretation of figures and numbers. Again, just like in OCS and MCS, you are not supposed to do major calculations. The figures and the numbers or any calculations will be provided as part of the question itself. What you are supposed to do is, as the senior finance manager, you are supposed to interpret this financial information in your answers. And when studying the syllabus content, E3, P3, and F3, you are not supposed to skip any syllabus content. Now, I've seen so many tutors out there saying that you can leave out certain parts of the syllabuses. I'm not suggesting you do that. And when we are going through examiner's comments or the examiner's report, you'll also figure out that the examiner asks you not to skip any topic. Okay, so you need to be thorough with all syllabus areas, and do not rely on predictions, as any area can be examined. Another mistake done by most tutors out there is they try to make predictions at every session, I'm not actually recommending that, because that is not in line with what is highlighted or stipulated by the examiner. So do not rely on predictions, because as I told you earlier, in a real life corporate environment, you can't predict the type of issues the company will face. So likewise, since the examiner is trying to replicate a real life corporate environment in your real exam, you are not supposed to rely on predictions. You need to be open-minded at all times. Just you need to imagine that you are the senior finance manager, and as a senior finance manager of PixelWiz, what type of action you would take. Okay. Right. So before we take the first break, let me tell you about the type of services which we offer at TCS Online. So we provide two main services and two main product packages are there. First things first, I'm going to talk about or take you through the essential pack. So the essential pack consists of full pre-scene analysis videos. There are 4 videos in total. And these videos, the first video is with regards to an introduction about the company. The second video highlights the internal dynamics of PixelWiz. The third video talks about the industry of the gaming industry. And the fourth video highlights the financial aspects, or the financial statements, or the ratios based on the financial statements of PixelWiz and its closest competitor. So those are the 4 areas which are covered under the full pre-scene analysis videos. And you'd get your hands on the annotated pre-scene. I showed you the annotated pre-scene. This is what it is. Okay, I showed it to you earlier. And as I told you earlier, we had carried out an industry analysis as well. And the most important product of this package is the 5 exam standard mock exams and suggested answers. I can guarantee you, if you go through these 5 exam standard mock exams and suggested answers, you are covering all the syllabus areas which can be tested at the SCS examination. So I said when it comes to studying E3, P3 and F3 areas, most students struggle as to how you can bring in this information or bring in this knowledge into the questions or the answers, actually speaking. You need not worry about these things, because the 5 mock exams and suggested answers covers all syllabus content which can be tested at your real exam. Okay. And there's a financial analysis as well. As I told you earlier, there's a video for financial analysis, and there's a separate document which consists of horizontal analysis of financial statements of PixelWiz and its closest competitor. And on top of that, I've carried out a ratio analysis for both companies as well. And there's a document which highlights the top 20 likely issues which can be tested in your exam. And there's an SCS familiarization kit. If you're coming through the general route, there's absolutely no point of going through this familiarization kit. However, if you're coming through the exemption route, definitely you have to go through this document. And you get access to a WhatsApp discussion forum as well, which you are, I hope you are already part of that forum. If not, I will be sending an email with all the information tomorrow, so that you can be part and parcel of this WhatsApp discussion forum. This consists of students just like you, and you can share your ideas. If there are queries, you can raise your concerns there. Myself and 2 other tutors are part and parcel of the WhatsApp group, and we will be addressing all your concerns and providing you guidance as well. And on top of that, you can benefit from the professional networks you can create through this WhatsApp group. And we are providing a pass guarantee as well. Okay, so a pass guarantee would ensure that if by any chance you fail, that is not the case at TCS Online, but if by any chance you fail, we will be providing the content free of charge for the subsequent sitting. Okay, and the investment for all this is GBP 99. And the second product which we are offering is known as the value pack. Okay, so we are offering the same type of material and content as per the essential pack. However, you are getting something additional in the value pack. Okay, so you would have access to an online mock exam platform So we had created our own mock exam platform, which replicates the real mock exam platform, which you'd see in your exam. And when you are attempting your mocks, all 5 mocks can be attempted within this mock exam platform, which will help you, be accustomed with the exam platform, which will be actually beneficial at the real exam, especially if you are doing a CIMA case study for the first time. Okay, so this is how our mock exam platform looks like. This is a snapshot of it. So you can see the time he is mentioned here, the remaining time. So there's a timer, and you can start typing your responses on the window itself. And there's a link for reference material as well. Okay, so it's just like the real platform which you'd see in the exam. And you'd have we will be providing professional marking and feedback on 3 mocks, and I myself will be providing feedback to you. And if I take you through the type of feedback which we provide, we are providing line by line feedback, to be honest, and this is the type of feedback you would get. And you can see the comments which I've made. All the issues has been highlighted, and if there are any positive areas, I've highlighted these parts as well. And at the very end, you'd be getting marks, and you can see the mark allocation, the mark breakdown. By gaining access to this mark breakdown, you are in a position to figure out how you had fared in the exam and which areas you need to really improve. And I will be providing a general comment at the very end as well. So that's the type of professional feedback which you get for your 3 mock exams. And there are theory recaps for E3, F3 and P3 areas. We are providing revision cards. If you go through these revision cards, you need not go through your notes and whatnot. It makes your life easier to polish your knowledge pertaining to E3, P3 and F3. And these are type of, I've provided a sample of a revision card pertaining to E3. Okay, and you'd have access to these types of revision cards. As you can see, everything is in a summarized format, which makes your life easier when polishing up your knowledge pertaining to theoretical content. So the investment is going to be GBP 199 if you go for the value pack. So you might be wondering whether you are supposed to go for the essential pack or the value pack. So the essential pack can be used by students who are extremely comfortable with self-learning. So if you had aced your OTQs, if you had gotten good marks for your OTQs, then you can go ahead with the essential pack, because you can, it appears that you can do your studies on your own. Okay. However, if you had not gotten good marks, so if you had struggled with your OTQ examinations, or if you had done your OTQ exams some time back, then it's better to go for the value pack, because you have personalized guidance, because we are providing feedback, and you can attempt all mocks in the mock exam platform. And on top of that, especially if you are coming through the FLP route or the exemption route, I would recommend you to go for the value pack, because this might be the first time you are doing a case study with CIMA. So in such a context, you need all the guidance you need to pass the examination in your first sitting itself. Okay, so we have had multiple FLP students in the previous sessions, and everybody passed because they opted for the value pack. Right. Okay, so before we move forward, I'm going to take the first break, and I'm going to go through the questions which you have raised so far. And if you have any questions, you can jot it down on the chat. So Pam is asking, hi, your voice keeps cutting out. I cannot hear you properly. Is that the case, guys? Are the others experiencing the same type of difficulty? So any other questions, folks? Now it's all right. Okay, superb. Any other questions? Any issues pertaining to the areas which I highlighted? Any questions, folks? Not yet. Okay. So since there aren't any questions, I'm going to move forward. Right. So let's try to figure out what your role is. I highlighted these points earlier as well. So you are supposed to play. So Pam is asking a question: what is included in the FAM kit? FAM. I am not too aware about what you are asking, Pam. There's no such kit called the FAM kit. The familiarization kit, probably. Yes. So the familiarization kit consists of information about the type of, the technical nitty-gritties of the examination, and most parts of the familiarization kit is covered under this webinar. Okay. So you need not worry too much about it. Hope I addressed your concern, Pam. Right. So then let's look at your role. You are supposed to play the role of welcome, Pam. You are supposed to play the role of a senior finance manager. Okay. As a senior finance manager, you are directly reporting to your finance director, as well as in your real exam, other directors of the company might ask questions from you, or seek your guidance or recommendations. And as a senior finance manager, there's a higher level of application and practical thinking expected for SCS. So you need to be a practical thinker. Why? Because you are assisting long-term decision makers or the strategic decision makers. You are assisting your board members. Okay. So there needs to be a high level of practical thinking. And on top of that, a high level of application of what you have learned under E3, P3, and F3 as well. Okay. So the theories are tested with higher levels of application. So when you were doing your OCS examinations, you would have seen that your entire paper was highly theoretical. Okay. So they would ask you a question such as, highlight the advantages and disadvantages of activity-based costing. Okay. Are we supposed to change our costing system? So those are highly theoretical areas. However, since you are a direct report to the board members are not, looking at the day-to-day activities of the company. They are engrossed with long-term decision making. So in such a context, just talking about theories won't help you. You need to know your theory, but you need to know how to apply these theories appropriately as well. So you'd understand how we are supposed to do it once we go through the suggested answer of the mock exam, which I'm going to discuss tonight. Then practical decision making needs to be there as well. When it comes to practical decision making, a long-term approach needs to be adopted. Why? Because you are involved with long-term decision making, or you are assisting the long-term decision makers within the organization. Right. So how are you supposed to attempt the mock exams, right? So we have, highlighted about all the other areas. Now let's move on to the mock exams. Okay. You have to attempt a minimum of 5 mock exams. Why am I telling you this? Because in order to cover all syllabus areas pertaining to E3, P3, and F3, definitely it would take about 5 mock exams. Okay. So you have to attempt at least 5 mock exams. You need to practice them appropriately. And when practicing these mock exams, it's better if you can practice under simulated exam environments. It's better if you can use a similar online platform, so that you'd find it extremely easy to navigate through the real exam platform when you are attempting your real paper. And it's better to practice your mock exams at a similar time of day as in line with the examination timings of your real exam. So for instance, if you let's assume you are supposed to do your paper from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. So when practicing your mock exams, it's better if you can stick to the same time frame, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., because practice is what makes you perfect. So try to get yourself accustomed to the real examination situation. And on top of that, try to get yourself accustomed to the examination room as well if you're doing it at home. So try to isolate yourself, try to create the same type of an environment so that you feel comfortable when you are facing the real exam. Okay. And seek personalized feedback as much as possible, because then you'd understand the main downsides of your answer, as well as the areas where you can highlight. And I took you through the type of feedback which we provide, and we are providing the mark breakdowns as well, which actually helps you to figure out the main areas you need to improve upon. And practice builds thinking, speed, and confidence. So it's better to practice, and practice. Okay, so it's better to do this practice these mock exams under real exam conditions through our mock examination platform. And do not reproduce suggested answers in the exam. I highlighted this point earlier as well. Most students try to replicate the answers or the answers which they have seen in suggested answers. I'm not asking you to do that. Just practicing will actually help you to figure out what type of answers you are supposed to provide, what type of an answer structure you need to adhere to. I will be talking about answer structures later on. So that being said, you need to be at all times open-minded. You are not supposed to memorize anything or the suggested answers. Right. So let me take you through the insights highlighted in the examiner's report. Let's try to figure out what the examiner is trying to tell us. Okay. So tips for future candidates, and the examiner is talking about best practice which you need to adopt when providing your answers. Relevance to the requirement. So what you write needs to be relevant, extremely relevant to the requirement. The type of examples which you are providing, or the type of information you are bringing in from the pre-scene, as I highlighted earlier, needs to be extremely relevant to the requirement. So in order to come up with relevant answers, you need to be in a position to understand the exact requirement of the task. So you are supposed to understand the exact requirement, and based on that, provide only relevant information. And you need to bring in technical knowledge which you have gained from E3, P3, and F3, and you have to, rather than just talk about theoretical content, you need to know how to apply that knowledge to the task at hand or the question at hand. And you have to come up with well-structured answers. I will be talking about what you need to do in order to come up with appropriate answer structures. And you have to use paragraphs as well. I will be talking about these points again later. And you have to provide justified recommendations. When you are providing an evaluation or when you are providing a recommendation, you have to always justify what you are doing. You are not supposed to provide general answers. You have to provide balanced answers. And whenever you are providing a recommendation, you have to always justify your opinion. So that's what a good answer looks like. I will be talking about these points in depth later on. Then before the exam, what are students supposed to do? Study all areas of the syllabus. Now, I highlighted this point earlier. I said that certain tutors ask you not to study certain areas, but the examiner insists that you study all syllabus areas. And the examiner says you need to apply to the given scenario or the task at hand. So all your information which you are bringing in as part of your answer needs to apply to the given context which is highlighted, or the given scenario which is highlighted in your question. And practice tasks. So the examiner is asking you to practice tasks in order to pass SCS first time. So you are supposed to type or write full answers as much as possible. Right. Then during the exam, what are you supposed to do? You are supposed to plan your answers appropriately. So you need to come up with answer plans. There's a methodology which you need to adhere to. I will be talking about these things later. And the examiner is telling us that the marker is under strict instructions to mark answers on their merits. So quantity does not matter. It's all about quality. So when developing your answers, you need to figure out whether your answer is in line with the requirements of the task, whether you are addressing the requirements highlighted in the scenario as well as the task. And on top of that, if you're bringing in additional information, you need to figure out whether this additional information actually improves the value of your answer, because the examiner has instructed the marker to provide marks on merit. So quality will be looked at rather than the quantity or the length of your answer. All right, so let's move on to the answering techniques. So we figured out what the examiner has told us. Now let's move on to the answering techniques. Use appropriate headings and subheadings. So in each task, you'd see subtasks. There could be 2 subtasks or 3 subtasks in total per task. Okay, so let's assume that there are 2 subtasks in your question. In question number 1, you have 2 subtasks. Then for each subtask, you need to come up with a main heading. So the main heading needs to be bold and underlined in format. Okay, and if you want to break if you want to break down your answer into separate parts, then you have to come up with subheadings, and the subheadings need to be in bold format. Okay, so it's of utmost importance that you use your headings and subheadings appropriately. I've seen so many students just writing their answers within one single paragraph without any headings or subheadings. That's gonna drive the invigilator or the marker crazy, because I've provided so much of feedback to students, and when I see an answer which is not structured appropriately, I do not feel like giving marks, because I have to fish for information. So rather than expecting or expecting the invigilator to fish for information, it's better to adhere to the format or the expectations of the invigilator. Then you are in a position to gain better marks. And you are supposed to use paragraphs with 2 or 4 sentences, nothing more, nothing less. So you are supposed to provide your answers in paragraphs, and each paragraph needs to comprise of 2 to 4 sentences. Okay, and on top of that, you need to come up with a paragraph per answer point. Okay, so let's assume you are supposed to bring in 10 valid points in your answer. If you are bringing in 10 valid points, you need to have 10 different paragraphs in your answer. Okay, why am I asking you to do this? Because the examiner has highlighted that you need to stick to paragraphs when providing answers. That's what you would do in a real life corporate environment as well. Okay, and on top of that, when everything is all the points are provided in separate paragraphs, it's easier for the marker to give you marks. I've seen students writing everything in one single paragraph, and as I've told you earlier, in such a situation the invigilator will have to fish for information. So rather than that, it's better if you can stick to the structure stipulated by the examiner. And looking at the word limit, ideally 900 to 950 words per 60-minute task. This is not a hard and fast rule, but if you provide elaborative answers, it would usually come up to 900 to 950 words. Okay, and you are not supposed to count the numbers or the word count, because as I highlighted earlier, quantity rather than looking at quantity, the examiner looks at quality. The invigilator is never going to look at your word count. However, why I've stipulated the word limit is to figure out how much of elaborative or how much of elaborations you need to provide in your real exam. 1/3 of the time should be allocated for reading and planning, and 2/3 of the time for typing. So as I told you earlier, per task you will be provided 60 minutes. So 1/3 of the time, 20 minutes of your time should be spent on reading the question and coming up with an answer plan, and the remaining 40 minutes can be spent on typing. So typing the answer. So I've seen so many students, what they do is they read the question and right away they start typing their answers. You are not supposed to do that. Instead, you are supposed to take the first 20 minutes of your time to come up with an answer plan. Okay, so how are you supposed to come up with an answer plan? You are supposed to read the requirement. Okay, type the requirements. So in the requirement, they are within one subtask, they would highlight what the requirement is. Type that requirement on the answer panel itself. Okay, and under that, come up with answers in a short form. So come up with an answer structure. Try to highlight in a concise or a precise or a summarized manner. Try to highlight which points you are going to cover in your answer. So for instance, let's assume there's a certain question. So you type down the requirement, and under that, you bring in all the points you're going to discuss in a short form. So in order to structure your answer for the entire task, you are supposed to take 20 minutes of your time. That's ample time for you to structure the answer. So while structuring your answer, you are in a position to figure out whether you are addressing the concerns highlighted in the question or the requirements of the task or not. Okay, so spend 20 minutes to plan your answer, then you'd have all the time in the world. 40 minutes is ample time for you to simply type what you have planned in your answer. So it's of utmost importance that you stick to answer plans, and this has been highlighted by the examiner as well. So don't try to write answers straight away. Spend some time. You have 20 minutes, that's ample time. Spend time to structure your answers, plan your answers. Then after that you have to start typing. Okay, and the expected typing speed is a minimum of 20 words per minute. Okay, so if you feel that your typing speed is really bad, there are so much of software out there. You can simply download something over Google and get your typing speed up. Okay, you are supposed to do these things. And weightage for each requirement as per time allocated. So within the questions itself, the weightages will be provided. So you need to you can figure out how much of time you're supposed to allocate based on the weightages provided. Okay, you'd see these things when I'm taking you through the mini mock exam. And do not spend time on formatting, paragraph alignment and whatnot, because these facilities are not provided at the exam. And on top of that, you're not supposed to check your spelling or whatnot. Just stick to what I stipulated earlier. You need to have headings and subheadings appropriately, and you need to write in paragraphs at all times. Okay, and remember, it's always about the quality of the points. I'm highlighting this point again because it's not about the quantity, it's always about the quality. Right, then what are you supposed to do when you are developing your answers? You are supposed to read the scenario first. So I'm further highlighting what you need to do when developing your answer plans. Okay, so read the scenario first. Plot the requirements into subheadings. As I told you earlier, you have to plot the requirements into headings and subheadings. Invest time to understand the requirement clearly. I said that you have 20 minutes, you can spend 20 minutes to read and understand as well as come up with answer plans. So invest time to understand the requirement clearly, because in most instances, I've figured out that students end up not understanding the requirement properly, or students end up answering part of the requirement and forgetting about the rest of the requirement. Okay, so in order to avoid such a situation, you are supposed to understand the requirements clearly and plan the answer first. Maximum 1/3 of the time can be taken, or 20 minutes of your time can be taken. Plan the answer in the answer screen itself. I'm not suggesting or recommending you to use the scratch pad to come up with answer plans. It's better to use your answer plans and within the answer screen itself. And once you have the answer plan, when typing your real answer, you just need to expand the points made under the answer plan, then expand the points in the answer plan. That's how you're supposed to develop answers. So if you stick to this methodology, it's I can guarantee you that you can provide better answers, and on top of that, stick to the time frame allocated by the examiner. Right. So there could be individuals in this session who had failed the previous sitting or previous sittings. Okay. So I'm trying to highlight how you can pass this time. You need to, first things first, you need to figure out whether you gave your best last time. So you need to do your personal reflection. So you need to figure out whether you did your mock exams, whether you practiced, whether you timed when doing your mock exams, whether you studied the syllabus content appropriately, whether you went through the pre-scene analysis document, whether you had done an industry analysis appropriately, whether you knew your finances or the numbers, and whether you seeked feedback or not from a tutor, all these things, or whether you highlight, you did your homework properly, but you panicked during the exam. All these things needs to be understood. So you need to do a personal reflection to figure out what actually went wrong last time. Okay, so where did you go wrong in the exam? You need to diagnose the reasons first and address them this time, because if you have the same issues this time, definitely you're not going to pass. Okay, you cannot keep continuing the same mistakes over and over again. Refer to the mini mock and suggested answers as well as the examiner's report. So I'm going to take you through a mini mock today. So refer to that, try to figure out what type of an answer I've provided, and try to figure out when faced with such a question, whether you would have provided the same type of an answer. And on top of that, I'm asking you to go through the examiner's report. I've taken you through the main areas of the examiner's report. The examiner has told you what to do before the exam, as well as whilst attempting the exam. And did you get feedback on your mock exam answer scripts last time? If not, it is recommended that you do in this sitting. So the action plan should be to work harder and smarter than the previous attempt. Okay. So when it comes to working smart, I can provide you with all the guidance you need. We will be providing general type of guidance to the WhatsApp group as well. Right. The type of deflections you need to avoid. Most students do these things. So you are supposed to avoid these things. Most students, place an overemphasis on the exam blueprint. You're not supposed to do that. Absolutely no point. Okay. Over reliance on predictions. I said, we cannot predict what happens in a real life setting, real life corporate setting. So because of that, you are not supposed to do that. You are always supposed to have an open mind when preparing for the exam, as well as when facing the exam. Excessive industry analysis, that's not necessary as well, because as I told you earlier, you're not supposed to be an industry expert. Misguided use of past papers. You can use past papers. However, you need to remember that these past papers are based on different case studies. So if it's from some other industry, or now if it's from the service sector, and if your exam is based on, or if your pre-scene is based on a manufacturing firm, then there would be a mismatch between past papers. So this is a common mistake carried out by students. And information overload, trying to memorize everything, trying to go through all the documents, that's gonna result in information overload. These are the things which you are supposed to avoid. Right. So having said that, it brings us to the second break. If you have any questions, you can raise them, because I'm gonna move into the mini mocks in a while. I'll be taking you through the answer of a mini mock. Any questions, folks? Any questions? Any questions up until now? Hello. Any questions? All right. Thanks, guys. Seems like there aren't any questions, so I'm going to move forward. I'm going to take you through mini mock and the suggested answer. So in this mini mock, usually in your real exam, you would have 3 tasks, as I told you earlier. But since this is a mini mock, we have included only 2 tasks, and the time allocation is 60 minutes. And you can see that I told you there could be 2 subtasks or 3 subtasks. So that's what you would see in this paper. And the time allocation is provided here as well. So that's that. So I'm going to take you through the answer for section number 2. Okay. So I'm going to move on to section number 2. Right. So you received the following email from the CFO, right, Maria? I received the devastating news that our data system has been breached. Okay, so Pixel data system has been breached. Please refer to the attached excerpt of an email sent by the head of IT. So let's go through the excerpt, okay, of the email sent by head of IT. Unfortunately, there has been a data breach which occurred today at around 10 p.m. I've done a blunder here. Okay, there's a mistake. Occurred yesterday at around 10 p.m. The maintenance engineers have conducted their own investigation and found out that our customers when trying to log into their accounts, have been redirected to a different page. So when our customers try to log into our accounts, they have been redirected to a different page, citing a data security requirement. Okay. And personal information of customers who have shared their user IDs and passwords have been accessed by hackers. So this is the problem, data breach, which we have experienced because of that. Personal information of our users had been compromised. The information includes the name, date of birth, address, phone number, email address, and credit card numbers of a typical customer. So the information which has been accessed by the hackers are the name of the customer, date of birth, address, phone number, email address, and most importantly, the credit card numbers of each and every of these customers. The customer verification number, the 3-digit validation code, has not been accessed by the hackers since we do not hold this information. So the CVV number, which is in the back of a debit or a credit card, has not been accessed by the hackers. Okay. Other than that, all the other information which is highlighted in here has been accessed. So this is a major issue which Pixelviz has faced. Okay, so you are supposed to address the following. Number one, describe the type of actions we can take in response to the data breach. So you need to describe the type of action we are supposed to take in response to this data breach and explain the strategic implications of these actions. So you are not supposed to just highlight the type of action we are supposed to take. You need to also highlight the strategic implication of each action which you are recommending or which we can take. So when faced with this type of a question, students usually miss out on the explanation part, explaining the strategic implications, because that appears at the very end of the requirement. So most students, what they do is they try to describe the actions or the type of response we take with regards to the data breach without highlighting the strategic implications. So that's exactly why I said it's of utmost importance that you understand the requirements. When you understand the requirements fully, then you are in a position to provide elaborative answers. Okay, so let's try to figure out what type of an answer you are supposed to provide. Okay, so I'm going to take you to the second part, section 2, the strategic options. Okay, so I've highlighted different types of strategic options, and under each strategic option, I've highlighted the strategic implications of sticking to the type of action we are supposed to take. Pixelviz could do nothing at this early stage. We can go for a do nothing strategy. It may be that the concerns expressed by the head of IT are unfounded. Okay, the report by the head of IT raises some alarming possibilities, but there is no direct evidence that the attempt to compromise users has been effective. So, you know, we have just received an email from the head of IT. That does not mean that we have all the evidence we need to take action. So that's what I'm highlighting here. So if these findings are unfounded, or the concerns of the head of IT is unfounded, there's absolutely no point of us taking some action. Okay, doing nothing could create the strategic advantage of avoiding an unnecessary controversy over Pixelviz's online security. So actually speaking, if a data breach has not occurred, and if we try to take action, then we will definitely face a disadvantage. However, what I'm saying is it's better to, you know, before taking action, it's better to figure out whether this has actually occurred within the company or not. It's better to gather all the evidence. For example, the main target for a thief would be the 3-digit security number within the credit cards, and it would be extremely foolish for users to have provided that information. So if a certain user has provided that information, it's actually partially the user is responsible, because when they are redirected to a new page, if the user blindly included all this information, then partially the user needs to be blamed as well. Okay, so that's a do nothing strategy. Okay, then Pixelviz could contact the major credit card companies and warn them that some of their customers' card details could have been hacked. So that's another option which we can take, right? And this has the strategic advantage of demonstrating a proactive response to the threat while minimizing the public exposure. So we are trying to minimize the public exposure through this. Why? We are not telling the public about it. Instead, we are getting in touch with the major credit card companies and keeping them informed of what happened. Okay, so that's a proactive response. We are supposed to do that. And on top of that, we are minimizing the public exposure. Unfortunately, data protection rules would prevent Pixelviz from releasing the identities of the users whose accounts have been reviewed since the scare began. Yes, we are not supposed to divulge personal information of users who has been affected by this data breach due to data protection rules within the country. Pixelviz would really have to seek the permission of users to share data with designated third parties in response to security threats. So if we are sharing this information, we have to seek approval from these users, because if not, we are breaching the Data Protection Act. Ideally, that should be part of the company's standard terms of business so that permission does not have to be sought. So ideally, if we had highlighted as part of our standard terms of business, when faced with a breach, we have we are going to gain access to your personal information, and we are going to share it with the credit card companies. If such a clause is mentioned under our standard terms, then we need not seek approval from our customers. So that's option number 2, or the step, the second type of a step which we can take when faced with this data breach. Then the third step which we could do is suspend all services until IT security has had the opportunity to investigate and resolve the events. Okay, so we can suspend all our activities. That's another option which we can adhere to. The strategic advantage of doing so is preventing any further losses of data until the threat of hacks can be evaluated and eliminated. So this is a long-lasting step which we can take. Users might be impressed that if we go for this type of a strategy, users might be impressed that Pixelviz is prepared to lose revenue, even though there is no way of knowing whether the attack could have been repeated. Yes, so users will be happy because we are stopping everything in order to provide long-lasting solutions to the data breach. The downtime would also make it easier to upgrade the defenses against possible data threats in the future. So we'd have enough time to upgrade our data security within the organization. Another option which we can go for is Pixelviz could make a public admission that warns users that accounts might have been compromised. So we can publicly accept that accounts had been compromised. However, it might affect our reputation in a negative manner when that happens. And it could work in a positive manner as well, because as a responsible company, when something had gone wrong, we are owning up to the fact that there had been something wrong within the organization. And another step which we can take is Pixelviz would have to issue a full press release and make an explicit post on social media. Okay, this also time is very much of essence if the hackers are planning to abuse the customers' credit cards. Yes, so we can go for something like this where we keep people informed. The recommended option should fulfill 2 objectives. So I've mentioned different types of options at hand, and now I'm highlighting the recommended option. So the recommended option should fulfill 2 objectives. What are the 2 objectives? It should be an immediate and effective response. So we need to take immediate action, and we have to choose the most effective type of an response. And it should maintain Pixelviz's reputation. When taking the type of action, we have to always think about Pixelviz's reputation. The public admission will achieve both of these objectives. So I'm highlighting, out of all the options which we have, which I have highlighted, public admission is the best, because admitting publicly is the immediate and effective response which we are taking. And it would be beneficial. In the short term, our reputation will be affected in a negative manner. However, in the long term, it's beneficial for our reputation. It will minimize future losses by alerting users to contact their card providers immediately. Yes. It will also serve as a warning to all users that they should be suspicious of any requests for such details that they may receive in the future. Okay. A public admission could also be phrased in such a way as to imply that Pixelviz is concerned with the welfare of its users and that it is acting to address problems. So I've highlighted, I'm not just saying that we should go for public admission. I've highlighted how we can practically do that. What needs to be included as part of the public admission process. Okay, so that's the answer for task number 1. And if I do a general analysis of the answer, you would have seen that when it comes to strategic options, I've taken in theoretical components, taking instant action, doing nothing and whatnot. Those are the theoretical components which I've taken in from E3. However, the answer scarcely looks theoretical. The answer looks extremely practical. Why? Because you are the senior finance manager. As a senior finance manager, you have to provide extremely realistic answers. And when providing answers, I said you have to apply your knowledge, which you bring in from E3, P3 and F3. I've done that. I've, everything to do with strategy falls under E3. And that's exactly what I've done in here. I've brought in all the knowledge, and however, when providing the answers, I've adhered to a practical approach, because that's what you would do in a real life corporate environment. Okay, so then let's move on to question number 2. Recommend objectives that the board should set for the head of IT of Pixelviz within the first 48 hours of the breach. So what type of objectives do we need to set concerning the head of IT of Pixelviz? Okay, objectives. I've come up with a main heading for the second subtask, and the heading is in bold and underlined format. You can see that. The head of IT should be asked to reach a tentative conclusion about the cause of the incident by early afternoon. So these guys are asking about what we need to do in the coming 48 hours. So first things first, this is the first requirement which the head of IT needs to fulfill. He needs to come up with a tentative conclusion. Okay, it should be made clear that this is a crucial deadline and should indicate the questions to which the board requires answers. So when coming up with a tentative conclusion, the head of IT is supposed to consider all the questions, all the type of typical questions the board will ask, and he needs to be ready to provide the answers appropriately. The head of IT should also be given a clear indication of whether the board would prefer a tentative answer to no response if a question cannot be answered with certainty. So if there is a no response, what are we supposed to do as a company? What is the IT department supposed to do as a company? That needs to be considered when coming up with a tentative conclusion. Second objective, the board also needs to know how long it will take for IT security to identify the users who have been targeted and the specific data that has been compromised. So that's the second area which needs to be highlighted, which needs to be handled by the head of IT. Users will wish to know immediately whether they need to take action to prevent losses, such as canceling their credit cards, which is of utmost importance. If that information cannot be released immediately, then the next best thing would be for Pixelviz's board to make an announcement as to when the facts will be made available. The head of IT security will then have to ensure that Pixelviz's credibility is not further affected by failing to meet any such deadlines. So this is the second area which the head of IT needs to look into. Then the third area, the head of IT should be asked to prepare a credible report. So we should ask him to prepare a credible report within the coming 48 hours. As to the nature of the attack, the report should comprise of information pertaining to the nature of the attack and the methods used by the perpetrators. The report should be supported by evidence that meets the standards required for criminal prosecutions in the case that perpetrators are ever caught and brought to trial. So I've highlighted the information which needs to be included as part of the report, which is supposed to be prepared by the head of IT. The head of IT security should be asked with preparing a plan for preventing a reoccurrence. Yes, recurrence or a reoccurrence. Okay, that stands up to scrutiny by an independent expert or consultant. So this guy, head of IT, needs to come up with controls to prevent such an issue in the future. And these controls needs to be of high levels of standard. Why? Because it needs to stand for scrutiny by an independent expert or consultant. The quality of the plan will be evaluated on the basis of its ability to offer a proportionate and cost-effective response to each of the weaknesses. So we are asking the head of IT to understand the weaknesses and come up with solutions. And these solutions needs to be cost-effective at all times. The head of IT security should be prepared to accept responsibility for the plan as well. You cannot just come up with a plan and delegate all the tasks. Even if you delegate, you cannot delegate responsibility. You can only delegate authority. So because of that, the overall responsibility for the plan should be held by the head of IT. Right. So that's the type of an answer you are supposed to provide. Again, it was highly practical and it was totally in line with the requirements of the task. So as I told you earlier, at the strategic level, although you need to know your theoretical elements or theoretical content, you are not supposed to provide highly theoretical answers. You have to have the theories in the back of your mind, but when providing answers, you need to be extremely practical. All right. Any questions, folks? So Surangi is asking a question. Under options, we are not using any points from the pre-scene. Is this fine? Example, absence of an IT director within Pixelviz. Is this okay? Surangi, it's up to you to decide whether you are bringing in information or not. So under options, definitely, not having an IT director within Pixelviz needs to be highlighted. Okay, if you highlight it, it's better. However, looking at the task at hand, what I feel is we are trying to take action to what has happened instantaneously in such a situation. We are looking at short-term options which we can take rather than looking at the long-term action. Okay, so if we are recommending long-term action, then definitely mentioning about appointing a new head of IT, appointing a new IT director within Pixelviz is a credible answer. However, since we are scrambling for information at the moment, since we are supposed to provide instantaneous solutions, recommending the appointment of an head of IT might be considered not too relevant. However, that's my opinion. As long as you can justify, then you would gain marks. Okay, I hope I addressed your concern. Okay, anybody else? Any other questions, folks? Any other questions? Sorry. Any questions? Quite strange that you don't have any questions even after going through the suggested answer of the mini mock. Good exam example. Okay. Thank you, Jono. Right. So if you have any questions, you can type on the chat and you can contact us via our website. So I'll take you through the website whilst you guys are, typing stuff, typing your questions if there are any. Okay, why is this not loading? Okay, let it load. Internet is problematic. Okay, let it load. So you can reach us through our website. You can email us and WhatsApp us on this number as well. And you can follow us on these social media handles, and our videos are uploaded to YouTube. Right. So before we conclude, let me take you through the website if possible. Yes. So what you need to do is you need to go to the SCS page. Yes, a question. Will you be sharing the mini mock question and answer with us? That's a good question, Pam. I will not be actually sharing the answer in PDF format. However, you can go through our website and in here you can see, click here to access free content. So as part of free content, you would have access to the pre-scene analysis video, not all 4 videos, but just video number 1. And you'd have the mini mock question and the suggested answer. So by clicking on this button, you can access all the information. And on top of that, you can see that we've given access to the essential and value packs as well. So if you click on it, it takes you to the pack. All right. So that's that. So our pass rate is 100% so far for SCS. And you can check out about what we are providing under different packages. And on top of that, there's this FAQ section, which gives you all the information which you need pertaining to all our packages. So the links are there. So if you want to, gain entry or gain information about the different types of different types of services which we are offering, you can gain all this information through the FAQ section, and the links are there. Okay, so by clicking on the link, you can figure out what type of content we are providing. And yeah, as you can see, all the links are here. So people had issues pertaining to what the SCS familiarization kit comprises of. So click on this link and you are in a position to figure out what type of content you would have access to. Right. Having said that, any questions, guys? Will you be sharing? Right. Okay. Okay. Any questions? So the concluding thought is, approach SCS as an opportunity to learn rather than an exam to pass. Right. I'm gonna stop the recording.